Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dallar and today we'll be taking a look at some of the changes Shadow Priests are getting in patch 8.1. Shadow Priest actually was one of my favorite alts for the longest time. I played Shadow Priest a lot during Warlord's General and I actually indulged in so much of its goodness back in Legion. When Battle for Azeroth came out, that's where the spec really dropped off for me. I felt like them taking away the artifact weapon changed the playstyle that was so unique to Shadow Priest back in Legion, and it just didn't feel the same. So Blizzard is coming back, and these changes are actually looking kind of exciting. Maybe even exciting enough for me to level my Shadow Priest to 110. I just got him to Zuldazar. I've been doing some islands as discipline, but I cannot wait to play the brand new Shadow. These changes are not on the PTR yet, but they should be coming up sometime soon. So if you're a Shadow Priest main, I think it's a good idea to get on PTR and copy your character over, so you can see what is happening to your favorite spec. Anyway, let's get into the actual changes. What does Blizzard want to change with the Shadow Priest for 8.1? And I have the list right here. There's a couple goals they want to accomplish. First, they want to make Voidform a lot more meaningful. So staying in Voidform longer should give players more of an agency over its duration. I'm kind of reading the post that was posted on Wowhead with the blue post for them. So I have the link for that down below if you guys want to read it yourselves. But more agency, so more choice if you really want to stay in Voidform. Currently as it stands, Voidform is something you don't really stay in for too long. There's not enough tools, and even if you go for a build with talents where you can stay in Voidform for the longest, it just doesn't happen. So let me get a timer going. Let me change this to Auspicious Spirits because I don't think I'm doing any kind of AoE. What's the duration of Voidform right now if you were to get up into Voidform? I probably don't even have the best talents. I probably would need to be running Shadow Ward Void, and these are the talents that I remember more or less running back in Legion, I guess, and last time I was on the PTR. So we'll just roll with these talents and see how long it can stay in Void form, and we'll just kind of time it. So I'm gonna refresh my dots when that happens, and we're gonna go for Void Eruption. Bam, Void form. I'm just gonna even get the Mind Bender. So this is kind of like the normal rotation. How much time would we be able to spend in Void form? And can Blizzard increase this? Back in Legion, I'll tell you right now, there's so many great Shadow Priests and there's so many skilled players that could stay in Void form for what felt like forever, and you could just see their damage go up exponentially. Even the early build of Shadow Priest with Surrender to Madness was insanely fun to watch, and we had about 25 seconds. Now, I remember doing this before, and I got 25 seconds not trying. This time I actually was somewhat trying with my rotation, and it was still 25 seconds. For me, it feels like maybe the ramp up for the Insanity is maybe a little bit too high, a little bit too quick, so there's not a lot I can really do about it. So yeah, I mean, I guess I could have gone for even more tools, maybe like Void Torrent to stop myself from getting on Insanity, Dark Ascension so I could, you know, gain more Insanity, but then you're going for big cooldowns and you're not really playing with the normal playstyle like you used to play Legacy of the Void and still have insanely long durations. So they want to increase the duration of that, and they want to improve Shadow Priest's defensive power and utility. This is actually, yeah, I actually wouldn't mind it. I'm gonna take a look at these changes from a PvE and PvP perspective. So more defenses for Shadow Priest I think is going to go for a long run in PvP. So first of all, they want to make Void Form matter more. Void Form increases spell damage by 20% up from 10, and if you take a look at Void Form here, activating Void Form drops Shadow Form, so you're actually losing benefits of Shadow Form like 10% spell damage increase and physical damage reduction. Replace them with Void Form, and I can show you right here that it actually does drop your Shadow Form. When you go into Void Form, bam, no more Shadow Form. It's just a whole nother form, so they don't really stack. So this is going to be a 20% damage increase, which is good. This is actually going to be really good for the spec. Insanity drain per second while in Void Form is reduced by 15%, so you can potentially stay in Void Form far longer than usual. Void Bolt Insanity generation increased by 25%, so you will be using Void Bolt like you did in Legion on cooldown, in between globals with haste and everything, to try to sink it as many times so you can maintain and stay afloat, which is again what Shadow Priest used to do back in the day. So that's good actually, to give Void Form a bit more of a playstyle and reliance. There's a couple different talents on even on Icy Veins, which I should bring up because they have an awesome quote that I do want to put in this video when talking about Surrender to Madness, because there's also a chance to Surrender to Madness, but I'm just not great at setting everything up ahead of time. But there's so many great talents, and on Ice Events, for example, they say that those talents are just not viable because there's the actual Void form itself stacking and staying in it is just not good enough right now. So it doesn't outweigh like the negatives of taking that talent, like Voidform can only be used in Voidform, not worth, because you can't stay in Voidform for that long anyway, so you won't be able to use it nearly as often. 45-second cooldown, it's clunky, I guess. Alright, let's talk about the defenses of the priest. So this is good. The Voidform is getting some buffs. We'll see if those will be enough to make a lot more talents viable and useful. Dispersion's damage reduction has been increased to 75%, up from 60%. And we agree that when it comes to penalty not being able to cast spells, it deserves to be stronger. Additionally, now increase movement speed by 50%. I like that faster movement speed so you can get out of places, and it's a little bit thicker. I always thought 60% was too low, man. I mean, those moments where in BGs and arenas, a Shadow Priest pops Dispersion, and if you just layer on him so hard while his Disperse is up, you can actually still kill through Disperse. This is like the worst immunity out of immunities. It's not an immunity, but it stops you from being able to cast spells, so like, what? Anyway, new talent being added to replace Mania. Mania is just people, even in Blizzard says, which is similar to but far less popular than Body and Soul. Mania will be, or Intangibility will be the brand new talent that will replace it and will reduce Dispersion's cooldown by 25% and cause it to heal you for 50% of maximum health over its duration. So this will be a utility tree completely. You either have movement speed for you or other people whenever you pop Power Word Shield on them, or it's your target's movement speed. So yeah, you or someone else's movement speed. So that'll be perfect. Then you have Sinlayan, reduces the cooldown of Vampiric Embrace and increases its healing down by 25. So if you want to heal the group and use it more often, you can. And then there's also Mania, where increases movement speed up to 35% based on your current insanity. That's going to be replaced with this Intangibility, with Dispersion being a shorter cooldown and heals you for 50% over duration. For PvP, this will be an insane ability. And you don't have a team where you can use the mobility and the self-heal or the heal for the team, which is, I think, is more group content for PvE. That'll be insanely good for the Dispersion, the cooldown, and the heal in PvP, to be able to heal over when your healer can't get you. Let's say if there's CC'd or something. Also, this will be great in raid situations and mythic pluses, because that self-heal also accounts with that 75% damage reduction that Disperse is getting now. Disperse is a 2-minute cooldown? So to reduce it by 25 would actually be insane. Are you kidding me? Wow. I didn't know it was a 2-minute cooldown. For what little that it does, I would make it a minute 50 maybe, but minute 30 I mean, but whatever. Anyway, talking more about defenses for Shadow Priest. Shadow Form's physical damage reduction. Blizzard saying that Shadow Form's 10% physical damage reduction was intended to feel like a bonus to Shadow Form, but instead feels like a penalty to Void Form, since you lose that defensive. This is why Shadow Priests are now going for, and most of them are running Edge of Insanity for PvP. This also affects PvE to some sense, but it's only physical damage reduction, so like how many abilities are going to be all full physical damage reduction for Shadow Priests? Maybe in some fights, but I feel like in raids you can kind of plan around stuff like that. In PvP, however, to have that physical damage reduction, especially against all those melees, is important, and to pop Void Form is basically to take away a defensive, to make yourself less tankier. Edge of Insanity, damage increased by 20% while at 100% sanity and not in Void Form. You're basically getting the extra damage of Void Form. Not just 10% damage increase, but 20% flat, so you can just stay in Shadow Form when you cast. This is why a lot of Shadow Priests don't even exit Void Form, so they can be tanky, they can stay tanky. Ridiculous. Anyway, they're replacing that with, instead of Shadow Form granting you 10% physical damage increase, they're replacing with Focused Will, which is exactly the same as the other priests have it. Focused Will, melee attacks against you cause you to gain Focused Will, reducing damage you take by 15%, stacking up to 2 times. So it has to be a melee attack, or I guess an attack of any sort. We can actually go to a Discipline Priest spec and just to see exactly what it says on the tooltip. But Shadow Priest will get Focus Will. In a sense, it's a buff and a debuff. Melee abilities and attacks. So melee abilities and attacks could be like casters shooting at you spells, right? I believe melee attacks against you cause you to gain Focus Will, reducing damage you take by 50% for 8 seconds. So this actually could be far stronger than Shadow Form, especially if it maintains, like if you have a melee Tranium, 15% for every stack, that's really strong. They also changed this for PvP for Discipline Priest though. It used to be 20% in PvP. Now I think it's like 10% per stack for PvP. So it still will be a 2 stacks, 20% damage reduction. If Shadow Priests have to go and have that Discipline Priest version where it's like the nerf 10% per stack, But 20% versus 10%, 20% of all damage reduction, but it triggers from like melee and abilities, compared to 10% only physical. I feel like in a sense Focus will be a bit stronger, definitely a lot stronger for PvP. For PvE, however, you do come in with that flat layer of 10% physical. If there's like a big physical AoE for the group, you have that already covered. But I feel like in PvE, Focus Will isn't something you'll need to actually just, you know, stack purposefully or play into. I mean, I guess there's moments where you can try and do that, but I feel like in PvE, a lot of the damage, you can use defensives, you can use heals, there's a lot of group utility where you can kind of overcome. But for PvP, for Shadow Priests to just get trained, this will allow them to actually go into Voidform a lot more often. You might actually play and use Void Eruption far more because of this damage reduction aspect. So I think this is good for the Priest, I think this is great for PvP. For PvE, I don't really know, but I don't think it'll matter that much. Not like a lot of people bring Shadow Priest to Mythic Pluses or anything. Speaking about people not bringing people to Mythic Pluses for Shadow Priest, we have another buff called Hallucinations. This is a passive PvP talent. Your successful Dispel Magic, Master Spell, Leap of Faith, Power Word Shield, all generate 6 Insanity. That has become a baseline for the spec. So this is how it reads. Your successful Dispel Magic, you purchase. Your Master Spells, which I don't even have on my bars right now, here we go, because I usually have a macro for that. Your Purify Disease, your Vampiric Embrace, and your Power Word Shield all generate 6 Insanity as mount per your filler Mind Flay. So whenever you have like dots on an enemy, right? Let's say in a raid or in a dungeon, and you usually just spam and filler Mind Flame. Now, if there's more to your filler, like let's say you want to maintain dots and, you know, Mind Blast the target, but let's say they get a buff, you purge it. And sometimes it would feel like that's a waste of a global since every goddamn ability is in GCD, right? But now for Shadow Priest, you gain insanity for actually playing your playstyle. You gain insanity for doing all these things that a support class would need to do. So you'll be maintaining dots and Mind Blasting the enemy, but if they got a buff, you could purge it. And you can go to this guy and purge it. And you can go to this guy and purge it. So you're helping your team. You're doing the things your spec's supposed to do. It's almost like supporting your team. But you're not going to be as punished on damage, on flat damage alone. Because sometimes it might feel like, oh, you know, somebody else will purge it. I need to do more damage so then I don't get kicked out of this Mythic Plus group. You know what I mean? Sometimes it can definitely feel like that. So now if you're trying to bubble somebody to help save them, or you're going for a massive spell in a group so that you can clean a buff, or you're trying to purge the enemy, or you're trying to debuff an ally to remove diseases off of them, you can actually play the support play style. You can actually be helping your team, and you'll be rewarded with insanity, so you won't be losing nearly as much damage. I think this is actually really good, and we need to add more stuff like this to the game. When there's aspects of a class that can come and support, whether it's a Druid, Soothe in Mythic Plus dungeons, whether it's a Shadow Priest who can Dispel Magic, Massive Spell, Purify Disease, Vampiric Embrace, Power Word Shield to help save allies. Like, they're actually helping the team. They're doing stuff for the team. So sometimes it feels like you're wasting a global where you could be doing damage, but instead now you're using global to at least get back some insanity so you can still continue to do some form of damage. It's not as punishing, and it's good. I feel like it offers so much more to the game. From the player, it is now expected that you're not just there just to do damage. It's a Shadow Priest, right? I feel like the game has devolved, and I feel like other games like Final Fantasy XIV, for example, have done that really well. I'm not playing Final Fantasy right now, but when I did try it, because my twin is a huge fan of it, what I liked about it is there's more than just damage to every single role in the class. Yeah, some classes are there just to be the biggest DPS increase. Like back in vanilla, you would bring mages and rogues just for flat damage, just power through it. But then you would bring certain classes. Like some groups would bring maybe an Elemental Shaman. Elemental Shamans weren't the highest DPS. They didn't really have some crazy utility. But they brought the totems, very similar totems, that a Restoration Druid or Restoration Shaman could have. You brought a totem at one point in BC that increased the damage of all other casters. So you bring him just so your other big damage casters could do the damage. Like, I don't know. I kind of like that they're bringing stuff like this back, slowly but surely. And I think this is good for Shadow Priest. So you can actually play the support stuff, just play what you're supposed to be doing. You want to do cleanse a, I don't know, disease, do it. You need to master spell a group of enemies to remove a buff, do it. To purge everybody, Power Word Shield this guy, you're not losing as much on damage. Hey, you want to help your team? Hey, Vampiric Embrace is needed. You know, it means that you're gaining some insanity, and and those globals don't actually feel like wasted globals. And it tells the player, hey, you're supposed to play this supporty role. You have all these cool supporty abilities. You should be utilizing them. You should be using them. And you shouldn't be punished for helping. Yeah, you get what I'm trying to say. All right, let's see what else is more. I like this overall. I'm a huge fan. Huge. Other talent adjustments worth mentioning. So if you're gonna go fear enemies, apparently Mind Bomb and Psychic Scream, the duration of the fear, Psychic Scream now take 40% longer to break from damage. This would be pretty good for PvP. I think this would be kind of nice because I felt like Psychic Scream breaks on any kind of, like, you could sneeze in the enemy's direction and they snap out of the fear. But now it means that, you know, they'll probably take a step or two while taking maybe dot damage. So this would be nice. Also, I feel like for Mythic Plus groups, when everybody goes in to dot people up and you want to spread the enemies around or interrupt them, you can use Psychic Scream and at least they'll take a step or two before they start going back to casting or attacking or whatever that we're doing. So that's kind of nice. Void Torrent, they changed that completely. Void Torrent is kind of useless right now, we can all agree. Now generates 30 insanity over its duration and deals 20% more damage. Additionally, no longer requires a Void Form to cast, so you can choose to use it on a priority damage target anytime. Wow, that's actually really good. Wow, look at that. What, I'm a level 110 Shadow Priest, so it's not like I can show you the best numbers of BFA max level, but Mind Blast for me right now deals about 2,000 damage. Mind Flay is about 2,500 over its duration. Void Torrent is about 5,000, so it's about double that damage over 4 seconds on a 45-second cooldown. And now you're buffing it by 20%, so it's a pretty big ability. And you're making it generate insanity, and no longer I need Void Form, so I can use it whenever. Hey! Now you made this from one of the worst talents to an actually viable talent that I might consider. Although it's not on PTR right now, it's not live yet, so I can't really go testing it. Although I like it, I like it. On top of that, Lingering Insanity also got buffed since Mindbender has been so good because the auto attacks from your Mindbender is just insane. Your Shadow Fiend damage is just, since melee attacks are so like hard hitting now, it's just insane how much damage that thing does. But Void Torrent is now stronger, Mindbender is still competitive, so Lingering Insanity got also buffed to be a little more competitive. So now it fades every 3 seconds rather than 2, so not a huge buff, but hey, maybe somebody will actually find a use for it. Maybe not. Then there's a huge one, which I actually find it funny how on Blizzard listed as other talent adjustments worth mentioning, and instead of rather go into detail on this. But Surrender to Madness, cooldown reduced by 33%, and penalty duration reduced by 50%. Surrender to Madness, let me just read what Icy Veins has it marked as its description. Surrender to Madness, currently not worth considering. Its usefulness seems limited to situations where you really need one singular strong Void Form during a burn phase, for example. But a longer Void Form is not as valuable as it used to be. Its upsides do not outweigh its downsides it has. So, did Blizzard solve it? So they're making Void Form and ability to stay in Void Form a lot better. That means Surrender to Madness is going to be a lot more valuable, so you could make some real long durations with Void Form. Surrender to Madness cooldown is also being reduced, so you can use it far more often, so it won't be just, you know, one big Void Form. You might actually be able to use it at the beginning of the fight and at the end of the fight. Or in Mythic Pluses, you'll be able to use it between trash packs and boss pulls. Also, it's, what is it, how did it write it out? Penalty duration reduced. I'm gonna guess the penalty at the very end. When you take damage, after it ends, you take damage equal to 90% of your maximum health and cannot generate insanity over 30 seconds. I'm gonna guess the 30-second part is what they're talking about. So it'll be down to maybe 15 seconds. So that means it'll be a lot better. So you can go back to using Void Form as per usual without Surrender to Madness as part of like the big cooldown, and reducing its cooldown by 33%. It's like about, and it's going to be between like 2 minutes and 3 minutes. I believe it's going to be something like 2 minutes, 2.6 minutes. So 0.6 of a minute is going to be something like 30-40 seconds. So it'll be 2 minute 30-second cooldown, 2 minute 40-second cooldown, somewhere around that, I think. That's just rough math. I didn't even pop a calculator out of that, so somebody will probably do the actual math. But to make it down from like maybe between 3-minute cooldown or 2 minute or anywhere in between of those would make this, I feel, sound a little bit more viable. Maybe a lot more people will look at it and say, hey, might be worth. Also, with the changes to Void Form so you can stay a bit longer, hey, might actually be worth. You can use it more often, not as bad of a penalty. And hey, Void Form you can actually stay in for a while, so, you know, you could do that. I think it's actually really, really good. I like the change to this one. I remember Surrender to Madness being the thing, it was the clap at the beginning of Legion, and watching great Shadow Priests that know what they're doing, know their claps back to back, play Surrender to Madness to like insanity, to play them so well, to play this playstyle, and just do insane amounts of damage before they die, just living forever though, before anything happens. It was so cool. And I feel like it was so unique to the spec. It was like the all-in button, an all-out button. It was so awesome. And it was what separated good Shadow Priest from bad until Blizzard went and nerfed it. And then, yeah. I don't know. I want this ability to come back. I think it'd be cool to have a big cooldown for a Shadow Priest, rather than, Voidform that you pop in and out of far more often than you should. But they're probably changing that too, so that'll be good anyway. Oh, that's awesome, dude. I'm super happy. I'm actually super happy with the changes they done. Super happy. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I do hope you enjoyed this update for Shadow Priest. I wanted to cover it because this is a spec I used to play. I used to play it back in WoD, I used to play it back in Legion, I used to love it, and with these changes, if they're looking as good as they are, I'll see what Blizzard adds more, but I'll probably start really leveling my Priest pretty hard now. I think I'll start getting him up and running before 8.1. Maybe level as a Discipline Priest through all of the islands, and then take a look at Shadow once 8.1 really releases. But let me know your thoughts on all these Shadow Priest changes, especially if you're a Shadow Priest main. What are your thoughts? I think this is actually pretty good, pretty exciting. Blizzard's taking right steps in the right direction. I'm hoping there'll be a few more buffs. I don't exactly know what else they could change, but I do hope that there'll be more changes to come for the spec. Maybe for the better, maybe adjust and take away some talents that are just not ever used, or not really often used. Maybe shuffle them around and such. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and I'll see all of you guys in another one.